Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We're still smiling because we're midway through a stress-free period of no Spurs in our lives. Look how happy we all are. If you're with us for the very first time, you can find us on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on X. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. And we're on Blue Sky too. Listen, we're joined by a very, very special guest and a very, very special returning guest that my DMs have been flooded with regards to this man through so much of this season, asking how has he got away from it and why am I being stuck with it? Well, listen, that's the life of Tottenham. Some of us can't escape, some of us can escape. Before we bring in our very, very special guests, let's bring in the man who nicknamed Tottenham the Crazy Train back in the Jose Mourinho era. And this is a show that we actually discussed doing such a long time ago, which we'll bring into forefront in a second. But Macca, lovely to see you. Yeah. They've got a major buzz cut your ear. What have they done to you, this club, since you've left me?
Mate, I was going to say, normally my hair's bigger than both of yours two put together, but now I've had the buzz cut going on, man. The summer is coming. Great to be back, and really, really delighted to be doing this show. We've been trying to get an expert in mentality and psychology within sport on for a while, and I'm really, really pleased to have Paul with us. 100%. It's going to be a great show, and we're going to get into lots. And I'm sure you're going to ask me about Angie and Ange out and Jed Spence's comments and all that rubbish that goes with. But let's really pull the show together around Paul, because he is one of our own as well, to be fair, and played for our great club many a times, and also now gone into the world of sports psychology and the mentality, which I really want to dive into. So yeah, I've got a new haircut, team. So happy days. Like and share if you want, or give me grief. I don't care. But the booth honor's gone, but we'll be back next winter.
I was going to say, give him grief because he's been away from that over long, and I've taken all the grief this season.
Grief as well, yeah.
Let's bring in our special guest. And can I just say, we will, of course, be diving into some of the mainstream topics around Spurs right now. Of course, there is speculation with regards to Christian Romero. There's interest from Atletico Madrid. We'll be touching on that. There's been certain suggestions out that Decky could be a target for AC Milan, depending on the future of Fabio Paratici, which is up in the air. Also, Basuma. There may be an inquiry in there from Aston Villa. So we bring in these kind of topics in throughout this show. But this show, very much as Lee has kind of suggested and build there, we've been looking to do a show like this for a very, very long time on Last Word on Spurs, because that word mentality has been a word that I think, to be honest, is a word that's brought up probably in every single show we have done on Last Word on Spurs in what, the 7-8 years we've produced this. And I think it's fair to say it's taken a while to bring on the right kind of person that's going to allow us to kind of deep dive into some of the mentality blocks, you'd maybe say, around Tottenham Hotspur and why it has only been one trophy win in the last 17 years, where Tottenham currently are in a quarter-final against Eintracht Frankfurt, where it could be another trophy on its way. Depending on where you stand on the manager, there'll be different thoughts on that and feelings. But look, forget all that for a second. Let's bring in our wonderful guest. Like I say, former Tottenham Hotspur player, Premier League in general, played for Norwich as well, transitioned into a performance psychologist, a keynote speaker as well. It's our absolute pleasure to welcome to Last Word on Spurs, the brilliant Paul McVeigh. Paul, thanks so much for your time. How are you? Lovely to see you here.
Yeah, really well, boys. Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. Obviously, I've seen what you guys have done for a long time, and you have done amazingly well. So yeah, really, really looking forward to getting into this, see where we go. And of course, the mentality, the psychology, the mental performance element is something I love. I love the subject. I've been working on it for myself in my own life, in my own career for 30 plus years. As much as I look like a 14-year-old child, I'm actually into the 31st year of my career now. So it's something I love talking about, something I love working on, and happy to discuss and see how that relates to everything Spurs.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, again, this has got so many facets to when we use that word mentality. You know, we look at the club in general, we look at the managers that the club have had, the players that have come and gone throughout it, and there's obviously different feelings around those that have come, those that have departed, those that are still here. But again, just to kind of give a bit of a briefing, Paul, on your background, you know, again, a Premier League international footballer, got to say, for Tottenham, Norwich and Northern Ireland. You compete against some of the world's best out there, can we just add? Scored at Old Trafford, of course, compete with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo as well, a renowned expert in elite performance. Your credibility, of course, comes from that unique combination of reaching the pinnacle of elite sport, as well as being the first Premier League footballer to qualify with a master's degree in psychology. We know you specialise in implementing the mental tools required to elevate the performance of leaders and teams from organisations really across the world. That also delves into financial services, technology, and the professional services industry. Just tell us, but what has that been like, that transition from footballer, Premier League, international wise, and then going into what many would maybe argue is quite a niche culture in terms of psychology?
Yeah, it was very strange, the fact that when I stopped playing, I was very fortunate. I got the 32. Actually had a second spell back at Norwich City, and I won my second championship over the years. First one in 2004, second one in 2010 with Norwich. So winning a second league title, I knew it was, if you kind of follow that parabolic curve, I knew it was coming towards the end of my career. Everything was just getting to the stage where I was getting too slow, too fat, too weak, all the stuff that doesn't go well to try and compete with the young, fit players. And I just knew it was time to step away. And it was also quite empowering. I think that's really important to say, that I chose to step away from football when I just won a league title. And again, when I went into this world of performance psychology, I just couldn't believe, especially because it started off mostly working as a keynote speaker with different companies around the world. My first one was with Aviva, obviously the big insurance company. Then started working with Microsoft and Cisco, all the way through now to Rolls-Royce, KPMG, Allianz Global Investors, and everyone else in between. But ultimately, whenever I came out of the playing side of my career, I looked and saw all these keynote speakers, and I thought, right, there's lots of rugby players. There are lots of Olympians. There's business leaders, military personnel. What else? Academics. People have just done amazing things like climb Mount Everest or cycle around the world. And I couldn't believe that there was nobody from our background, nobody from football, no one who'd obviously ever played in the Premier League. Lots of, let's say after dinner speakers. So I've seen the Jimmy Greaves, the Paul Mersons, all the way, even seeing like Ray Parlour, all these guys who are amazing at what they do, but it wasn't really me, clearly being Irish, I love having a laugh. 20 years in the change room, I love the crack, I love the banter, but that wasn't me standing up in front of a room trying to, make people laugh. I just thought, because I'd been working on this subject for, as I say, by that stage, it was 16, 17 years. Everything was about developing me and getting the most out of myself and my career. And of course, that just means maximize my potential in terms of my mindset. And once I came out and saw that this was clearly a gap in the market, I thought, it's the number one sport in the country. It's actually the number one sport in the world. I clearly must have some sort of possibility of getting some work. And my first gig in, I think it was November 2010. And, it's been going for 15, 16 years. And I'm very, very fortunate to get to work with some of the best performers in the business world. Of course, working with a number of Premier League clubs that I have over the years as well. So very, very fortunate that I get to do what I love to do in the corporate world, but also have worked with a number of Premier League clubs, a number of Premier League players on their own mindset and psychology.
Love that. Paul, you were born in Belfast, obviously as you referenced, and starting your footballing career at Spurs, where you actually scored against Coventry. Talk us through what it's like to sign for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and also score for the football club. What was your kind of memories, just delving back into the memory banks of playing and scoring for Spurs?
Yeah. Well, supposedly that's almost like jumps right to the end of the story, in terms of the timeline. That's, of course, it was the highlight of all the, well, was it the highlight? I did an advert with Gaza when I was 11. So, maybe that was probably the highlight, because working and meeting, my idol just after the 1990 World Cup, when he came back, he was such an icon, my favorite player. And I actually just quickly tell you the story. I turned up actually at White Hart Lane on my first day on trial at the club. And do you remember John Moncur, who was the youth development officer, obviously the father of the player, John Moncur? Yep. And so John came out and he said to me, he's like, listen, you're not going down to Mill Hill, down to the training ground today. We actually need you to do an advert today. And I was like, little 11-year-old shy little kid, barely said anything to anybody. I was like, right, okay. And he said, so as long as you're happy to do it, then, brilliant. And I was like, right. He says, so great. So it's for the Sun sticker album, actually, like probably before those kind of Panini stickers, and also for the Sun sticker album, but it's out on White Hart Lane. It's with Paul Gascoigne, all the things. I was like, yep, I'm in, love it. And he's like, we're doing two adverts. One is for Scotland, so you have to wear a Scotland kit, and the other one's for England, so you have to wear an England kit. And I was like, what? Now, just a bit of context for anyone who doesn't know. Growing up in Belfast in the middle of the 80s, 90s, troubles going on, lots of, civil unrest back home. If I was going to go on national TV in an England shirt as a, promising young footballer, let's just say I might not have had many kneecaps left whenever I went home, because they would have been very quickly taken off me and injured. So I was just like, John, I can't do it. Honestly, it's not worth it. And he's like, what do you mean? They've come, the production team's here, the Gaz is on his way down, you have to do it. And I was like, John, I can't, honestly, it's not worth it. I'll literally get beaten up if I go home with an England shirt on. And he's like, well, you have to. I've already told him. I was like, honestly, I can't. And he goes, we'll pay you £200. I'm like, where do I sign? Give me that contract now. I'm like, sure. And honestly, it was like the first moment of that kind of journeyman career that you have of like, you'll just go to the has bidder and you want to go and earn some money from football. And it was my sort of introduction into life as a young footballer. But then, of course, coming over the years, when I finally signed at 16, it was just amazing. Amazing in one way, but also just the most normal thing in the world. As I think it was like 1st of July, 1994, I left Belfast and I was playing with my mates in the street, playing football, kicking the ball around.
Crazy.
Got on the boat or whatever, flew across, arrived at White Hart Lane. Of course, that's the summer that was signed Jurgen Klinsmann.
Yeah, Klinsmann. Because so you'd have worked under Alan. Obviously, he was my boss for 2.5 years, so you'd have done the same thing working under Sugar.
Yeah, so I used to walk in and see obviously his roles, AMS1 and stuff, sitting outside the reception. So this was my introduction to life at Spurs, seeing Alan Sugar's Rolls Royce, meeting Jurgen Klinsmann on my first day, and I think this is probably one of the most pivotal moments in my career, and this is why I really need to tell you this part. So, as all of the youth team are there, and we're all in because Jurgen's there, and it's obviously media frenzy. Press are trying to get photographed. Obviously, he's driven in his Volkswagen Beetle, looks like a movie star. He's already won the World Cup. He's just, he starred 1994 World Cup. Now, because the first team weren't back yet, the youth team all had to go on and train with them so they could get the photographs, and that's brilliant. Now, probably all the rest of the lads who were in the youth team at the time, like Stephen Clements and Luke Young and all those lads who were in our youth team, probably were thinking, isn't this amazing? Maybe it's that kind of, that London confidence that I never had coming from Belfast. That just had so much inner belief and confidence. But my experience of meeting and training with Jurgen on that first day was horrendous, because I actually looked at this World Cup winner and I remember just looking at him and thinking, oh my God, if that's what it takes to be, a Premier League player, a professional footballer, a Premier League footballer, an international footballer, all the things that I wanted to do as a young player, looking at Jurgen, I was like, there is no way in the world I will ever, ever, ever be able to do it.
Oh, really?
Now, that was so detrimental to my progression. Wow. And this is why I find this whole subject fascinating, because nobody at Tottenham Hotspur told me that that's what I should think. And nobody told me that that's what I should be saying to myself. But for pretty much 2 to 3 years, 2.5 years to be precise, I was telling myself that over and over. People like you, Paul, you don't become a professional. You don't become a Premier League player. People from Belfast, you don't do that kind of stuff. You have to be a Jurgen Klinsmann. You have to be a German. You have to be a World Cup winner. Just not possible. So that was the kind of the introduction to my life at Tottenham.
This is where we go a little bit off script, Rick. I'm really sorry, because I just want to explore that if I can, because I actually believe that sort of mentality has a knock-on effect on so many, not just young footballers or young sports men and women, but also across business. And you'll know that now, Paul, from being on the speaking circuit like I'm on as well. You know, you'll see that. I do a lot of coaching from a business perspective as well. And you see, they don't even have to be young. You're young in terms of new business startups. And actually the mentality of, should I be here? Am I good enough to be here? That confidence aspect. It's a huge part of the game and a huge part of human psychology. And I think that in the game, if that little doubt creeps in, it's very easy for all of us in the comments, us running these podcasts and all that sort of stuff to make assertions. But if that individual has that voice in their head saying, I'm not sure I'm good enough here, I'm not sure I should be here, that's going to have a huge effect on their performance, isn't it, Paul?
Absolutely. And this is the worst thing. It's not like I was getting the crowd, 35,000 people telling me this, or the manager, obviously my first manager, another World Cup winner like Jurgen was in Aussie Ardiles. We had Stevie Perriman, we had Big Pat Jennings. So you've got like the most amazing people, and none of them were saying bad things because I was going out and training and actually probably doing quite well. But in my head, because of that experience listen, it's a whole other conversation why I thought that from meeting Jurgen, because he was this nicest guy in the world, obviously everybody knows, but I had it, and it's a bit like we call it in psychology. It's that reframe that I had of what everyone else was thinking, but in my head, I was thinking about it like this, and it was really destructive and really unhelpful. So just to kind of carry on with the story and the timeline, just to give you a little bit of an idea and insight into what happened coming through those youth teams. So I was always, let's say, that kind of, technically it was okay. It was probably somewhere in the middle, but athletically I was either, if not the bottom, right in the bottom three. So all the running sessions we do, and of course, Jerry Francis then come in, and obviously his thing was just the running Terror Tuesdays and all that stuff. So it was a real struggle for me. So I pretty much got through 2 years trying to be a professional, physically not really coping with it, mentally definitely not coping with it, technically probably a little bit, it was okay. But I finally was the last player in our youth team. So we had players like Rory Allen, who was getting his contract after like 6 months because he was so good. All these other players that were just like, yep, Stephen Clemens, get through, move them up. But for me, I was actually the last player in the very, very end of my second year youth team. And they finally gave me a decision and said, okay, we'll give you a 1 year contract on things like 11 grand a year. So it was like 200 quid a week or something. Wow. And I was like, can't believe we've even got this. Anyway, got the contract. Signed it.
Paul, Paul, can I just ask on that then again from a mentality perspective? So now you've gone through that kind of that, I suppose, jump through them hoops and got through to the point where you've now got a professional contract with the mighty Tottenham Hotspur, and yet you're still now thinking in your head, I don't think I should be here. I can't believe I've got this type thing. Like, is that kind of how it went?
That's exactly how it went. And this is what is so weird and sort of probably also so strong of how psychology affects everything, is that for the first 2 years before I was a professional, I didn't think people like me, I didn't think I could ever become a professional. Even when I'd physically signed my professional contract, I still didn't believe that I should be a professional footballer because of all the things I just mentioned. This little internal voice, we call it psycholinguistics, all the things that you're constantly saying to yourself and others that you're just constantly reaffirming, reinforcing. So fortunately, I did get the contract. One little thing that probably just is worth noting is that I had some sort of issue with my breathing efficiency. So the doctor noticed it, got an operation for me. And I think essentially my septum was slightly off. So they straightened it over the summer, cleared out a little bit of the polyps and stuff. And I came back and it was almost like I was a new man. I went from the bottom three in the running to the top three in the professionals of running. Amazing. So it clearly was a real issue with my breathing. So not only did I feel more confident because I was suddenly physically able to compete, technically I felt good. And then this was the key. We have, of course, had Rory Allen come through our youth team. He was the best player in ours. So he's the first year youth team, got into the second year team, first of all. Then when he was a second year youth team, he got into the reserves, first of all. And then, of course, when he was a reserve player, we were all first year pros. He was the first one to make his debut out of our cohort. So I don't know if you remember, but Rory made his debut against Man United live on Sky Sports, under the lights, White Hart Lane against the Becks, Giggs, Scholes, Keane, that kind of, amazing late 90s team. And of course, all the boys, all the young players, everyone's there watching Rory. And after, 35 minutes, Rory scores, put his 1-0 up. Everybody's going nuts in the crowd. Obviously, the crowd's going nuts. All the young players are going nuts. We're all buzzing, absolutely buzzing. And this was the pivotal moment for me, lads. I remember looking at my mate, and that's the key, I think, in this. I saw my mate, who I just had 2.5 years with, who he was a good player, but he wasn't like Jurgen Klinsmann. And I saw my mate score against Man United. And I remember it's like a little flick of a switch in my head. And suddenly I thought, wow, if he can do that, and so can I. And that was in the January of 97. And within 3 months, I made my debut away at Aston Villa, where Gareth Southgate kicked me all over the place. And poor Ugo, God rest him, him and Gareth basically kicked the shit out of me all night or all day. But made my debut then, had another appearance at Anfield against Liverpool, and then on my home debut against Coventry, scored. And it was just like, this is the best thing ever.
That is quality. And that, I just love it. Sorry, Ricky, but I love that, because it has to be, sometimes it's not just one moment, but a lot of the time it is a moment or one moment that says, hey, I've arrived. Like, I think to a certain degree, we've seen that with Jed Spence, for example, over the last kind of few months, whereby, you know, he was pushed from pillar to post, not really fancied, a club signing from Conte's perspective. You know, I know he didn't come for our youth team per se, but then arguably now he's I don't know how he hasn't got into the England team, to be fair. I don't care that he's not, personally, because I'd rather him be fit for Spurs. But, you know, from his perspective, he's been talking this week on the podcast that Rio does, and he wants to be in the England side and whatever. But I think that there's moments where you just go, actually, maybe I do belong here, or actually maybe I do need to change something. You know, no one's coming to save us. Like, no one's coming to save us. It is up to us to do it.
It's actually the opposite. I'd say it's the opposite.
Karen Paul, we're going to.
I was just going to say, I think as Lee just proved, okay, I think it's actually the opposite. In the nature of professional football, it's actually stand on their head whenever they're down, kick them when they're down. If they're going 1-0, let's try and score 4 more. That's the mentality of winners. That's the mentality of football. It is, and it's interesting whenever I get introduced to you know, whoever I'm speaking for in the different clans. When I get introduced, one of the lines that generally comes up is that, you know, Paul played in what could be considered the most ruthless and competitive industry on the planet. And the reason why I like that line about professional football, and especially the Premier League, is just think about it. I'm sure you're all the same as me. I was just growing up in the streets of Belfast, just kicking the ball around with my friends. Hundreds, if not thousands of people at that time, just in Belfast, tens of thousands probably, wanted to be a professional footballer.
Yep.
Then you extrapolate that all across the UK, all across Europe, all across the world. And think about the millions, if not billions of kids who wanted to be a professional footballer. And of course, they don't want to be a professional footballer in their country like me. I don't want to play in Ireland. Where do I want to play? In England, in the Premier League, because it's the best league in the world. So everybody's trying to get to the Premier League. So it's that, you know, reaching the absolute pinnacle to get to that level. That's why I really do think it is the most competitive and ruthless industry on the planet, because how many people are trying to be a doctor? Well, probably quite a lot, but nowhere near as much as trying to be a professional footballer. How many people want to be a banker, entrepreneur? Yes, there's competition, but not millions or billions of kids when doing. And the only reason why they're not doing it is because they weren't good enough for physically, technically, mentally, like we've just discussed. So yeah, I think it's really, really important to show that is why, to get to that level, not only do you have to be so strong mentally, physically, technically, and all the rest of it, but then whenever you are in a position to then beat or win someone, you have to be so ruthless to want to stand on their neck when they're down.
You know, I always knew, Lee, when we were looking to do a kind of show like this, how powerful it would be, because again, I think for any individual out there that may not want to admit it, we're all battling our own individual demons all the time. And it's not something that maybe people are proud to talk about, but I always want to emphasize that point out there, that we're a massive advocate when it comes to mental health, any individual, any gender out there. And I think, again, hearing from somebody like you, Paul, that has walked the Premier League, you know, tightrope as you may be and transitioned into a different career, I think it's enlightening to hear that from somebody that has got to that very top of that, you know, you'd say pinnacle in terms of playing in the Premier League, which so many want to achieve and just simply haven't got there. it's enlightening to think that, and we're kind of really just at the start of that story. I mean, we know again from the way it works at Tottenham, you leave the football club, you obviously have a period at Norwich where, again, you help them to achieving promotion to the Premier League. I know you're actually very much loved up in Norwich. I've got a song for you up there. Maybe tell us very quickly about how that kind of playing career does carry on from Tottenham. Give us a bit of a journey into how that works for you. You leave Tottenham, you go to Norwich. Maybe give us the reasons for that and how then obviously your career does follow on and move forward.
Yeah, so it was interesting because we had a lad called Neil Fenn who was obviously at Spurs with me at the time, and because he went on loan first up to Norwich, and then because that was probably my first understanding of who is Norwich City. I probably wasn't even really aware of them. Probably knew a little bit about the UEFA Cup run with Jeremy Goss and Chris Sutton and all those boys, but not really a lot until Neil Fenn went on loan, played a couple of games, and then came back. And I think this was the kind of I'm going to call it ignorance. I was going to say snobbery, but I don't think it was snobbery. I think it was just complete ignorance that because it had those 6 years at Spurs, I wasn't looking at the time, obviously, it was Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, but I wasn't looking at leagues below the Premier League. Of course, we all do it. It's even like the young kids going into the academy now. They're not thinking, oh, I'm going to start at Tottenham Hotspur in the academy and then we're going to end up at Rochdale. It's like, no, you're going to start at the academy and then you're going to be a Premier League player for Spurs. That's just the way you think when you're a young player. So whenever I had that opportunity to go to Norwich City, I thought, well, yeah, I'm leaving Spurs because, first of all, I had George Graham, who really didn't fancy me, even though it was like pretty much doing everything I could do. It was like top scorer in the reserve, scoring every time I was playing, and just he didn't want to put me in, so that was fine. And then he actually left, and it was David Pleat who said, "Listen, I think you should move on, get some game time, start playing." Which he was right. Just probably not nice to hear, but he was right because I needed to play. I was 21 at the time, I think. So I moved on to Norwich City, and of course I thought, all right, I'll go to Norwich and I'll play up there and play in Division 1. Then of course I get to Norwich City, start training on my first day, and actually had my oldest best friend in football, a lad called Phil Mulrine, who in 1994, whenever I went and started with Spurs on that story about Jurgen Klinsmann, Phil actually went and started at Manchester United, obviously a couple of years after the class of 92. So he was playing there with Becks and Giggs and all those boys. And then after a couple of years, he got into the first team and then, even actually scored a hat-trick on the first game of the season for their treble winning season. So, so really, really good player. So Phil had arrived back at Norwich. I thought I was still going to play up front. And then I started training and then realised there was a young Craig Bellamy in the team who was just the best player I'd seen, probably right up there with like Teddy at the time. He was just like unbelievable as a 17-year-old kid. And of course, within 2 months, he signed for Coventry for like 6 million. And then the other striker they had was a big guy called Ewan Roberts, big Welsh striker who'd scored like 300 goals in his career by the time I got, so you just like, you were so ignorant about these amazing top quality professionals who were playing at the league below the Premier League. And so then I realized this isn't going to be easy. And then I didn't even really establish myself at Norwich for probably a good 18 months. So the fact that I'm actually standing here today, guys, is such a miracle because I pretty much got to nearly 22, nearly 23 before I was playing regularly. Now, that doesn't happen very often. Normally, if you're not by 21, you probably moved on. By 22, definitely. And by 23, it's just, if you're not playing, what's the point? So, but the fact that I'd finally get in the team, finally broke into the team, playing every week. And then we got into the playoff final. Actually, the one photo, my one piece of memorabilia after 20 years in football is that one photograph that I keep. I don't have any shirts, don't have any memorabilia, don't have anything. Just that one photograph because we played in front of 75,000 people for the chance to get into the Premier League. Lost on penalties, which of course was pretty devastating. But it was a real springboard to my career because then played the next few years and really just kind of established myself as quite integral in the team. And then it's one of those things for how long can you keep that level of performance? And just to really jump to the end, and I think try and give you the context of this, because obviously you are massive fans, you know what these guys do every single week when you're watching the games. But I don't think fans truly understand the effort, the discipline, the dedication, the demands that are placed on your body, mentally, physically, all the things that I was doing that I probably shouldn't be doing, like the drinking and the nights out and stuff. It's just because you're a young kid trying to make your way and you're trying to make the best decisions, but probably making lots of poor choices in life. But interestingly, I've actually started like a mini MBA with Manchester Business School, and we were talking about it today, and it's all about basically the stage I'm at now. I've got 3 businesses, and I'm trying to build it to exit it in a couple of years. And we're talking about like how much money can you get? How much do you need? What are you looking for to exit? And what really was fascinating for me in football is that by 19, when I got that appearance in the Premier League, and then I got a 3-year contract, got my first 6-figure contract, got my first nice house, got my first sports car, all these things, suddenly you realize that that's not it. That is not it in life. You can have money in the bank, you can have a really nice place to live, you can have a sports car, but that's not it. And so all of this stuff that's happening in the background whilst you're trying to be a professional, whilst you're trying to be an elite performer, is actually just quite a lot to deal with. And that's where you see so many players going off the rails, so many players making bad decisions, and why not everybody can be the Ronaldos and Messis who are just like so focused on this path to greatness, while the rest of us mere mortals are trying to deal with the life as best we can.
The thing is that, with the Messis and the Ronaldos, the Beckhams to a certain degree, like, these top elite football, Harry Kane, one of our own, absolute perfect example about what I'm going to say is that they don't do it for the money. They don't do it for the sports cars. They do it for the houses. That is just a byproduct of being brilliant at what you do. It's the same in business as well. If you actually set up a business to go out, if your why, your mission is I want to earn as much money as possible, you're not going to do it. But if your why is to change something that needs to be better, or like for example, to hire people based on data and personality and behaviors and competencies, not on a resume, which is what my tech business does, that's where you start to become successful. And it's the same, in my opinion, in sport, where if you're actually going out and being the best version of yourself that you can be, to the point that you're making ball for your career, and the fans maybe not appreciating the fact that you have to give up so much at the beginning to be able to even think about being a Premier League player. And then when you're there, the difference at this level, 1%, 0.5% makes such a difference in performance. We've just seen that with Spurs recently, haven't we, with all the injuries or whatever. You have to be at that kind of elite level. So that sacrifice that maybe we don't see as fans, that you and your fellow professional footballers have to go through, and actually the whole mission, the whole why you've set up a business in the first place, why you want to do what you want to do. It's like this podcast. Like Rick set this up 8 years ago. Didn't do it for any other reason than to build a community for Spurs, and that's why it's successful. Anything else that comes after that is a byproduct. As soon as you start focusing on what was the byproduct, you start to lose the authenticity of whatever it is you're doing. And that's when you start going down. And that's whether or not that's a podcast, whether it's a business, whether that's football, in my opinion. And I think that's a psychology of where we are. There's so many people. I'm not making any judgments at all when I say this. There's so many people that hit their top level, and that's okay. Like, and maybe somebody's top level is League 2, right? But other people's top level is League 1 or Championship or Champions League. Like, it doesn't matter where you are as long as you are where you want to be. Does that make sense? And I think that's why, in my opinion and my experiences, has been that if you're authentic with what you're doing, and you're obviously good at what you're doing, you're authentic of what you're doing, that's when you become successful. And I think I've met so many people that are successful, so many sports people, individuals, business people, whatever it is. And there is a common theme that runs through all of them types of people, and that is being who they are and working hard, and that comes without a shadow of a doubt, but actually putting everything that they want to put in and being authentic to themselves. Does that make sense?
Can I bring us back? Can I bring us back to Spurs then? Because this is
please.
I think really important point to say here. So because I finished playing in 2010, and because I was around the Norwich City area, I was watching a few other games, and of course Chris Hughton then became the manager. And of course, Chris was there with me whenever I first started in '94. So it was almost like a surrogate dad to me. Unbelievable guy. Love the fella. Then, because he was the manager at Norwich, he obviously brought in Harry Kane on loan. Now, I watched Harry Kane for, I don't know how many games he was at Norwich City for in that Premier League season. And I watched Harry play. And I cannot tell you how bad Harry Kane was at Norwich City. But if you had told me in that 2011, 2012, whatever it was, that he would have gone on to be Spurs' greatest ever goal scorer, England's greatest ever goal scorer, the records that guy's done, the professionalism, the levels he'd hit, I would have been like, mate, you have no idea about football. This guy can't hit a barn door. He was so bad. And of course, it wasn't just the Spurs he didn't perform. It was, what is it, like 7 or 8 loans, and a couple he did well, a couple he was like really poor. And that for me is just like mind blowing to go from that guy was, yes, technically probably he was quite good, but we all know he's not the fastest. He's not the, he's got loads of things, but like probably like the way Raul, the former Real Madrid player would be a sort of, I remember Fergie talking about, well, he's not the fastest and he's not the best in the air and he's not the best at holding it up. He's not, doesn't do all these things, but he's amazing, just an incredible goal scorer. And Harry Kane is the same. It's like when I saw him playing as a young kid, he was nowhere near any kind of level. And this is where I think the big difference is that football is probably really lacking, is the intrinsic desire to learn and improve. I think that's a real issue in football. So I would say the majority of footballers that I've come across don't think, how can I get better today so I can be better tomorrow, so that I'm on this, that kind of aggregation of marginal gains, that kind of trajectory where I'm going to keep improving, whether it's physically, technically, whatever it is. And I'm open to just trying more and more things. I'm just going to keep improving my performance levels. Just don't see it in football. And I've worked with 3 Premier League clubs. I've been in football for 20 years. Just don't see it. I'll give you a quick example. It started off whenever I was at Spurs. I remember having a conversation with my mum. And, you'd phone home at the weekend just to catch up with the family. And she said to me one time, Paul, I was about 17. So it must have been about 1995. She said, Paul, why didn't you try yoga? I think it might be really good for you. And I was like, what? Yoga? No, not for me. Don't fancy it. And she was like, no, honestly, it'd be really good. I was like, well, why do you think that? She goes, well, it improves your flexibility. She says, would that help your football? I was like, yeah. She goes, and it reduces your injuries. Would that help your football? I was like, yeah. She goes, and it improves core strength. I'm like, I have no idea what core strength is. Anyway, I eventually started. So I remember buying this. I'm sure the younger listeners and viewers won't remember like a videotape, but I had put in this videotape of watching this guy doing yoga, and I was doing yoga before going into Spurs most days, right? Then because I didn't really have the cojones to bring my yoga mat into the Spurs training ground, then once I got the Norwich, then once I started playing every week, and I was like, I'm one of the boys. I'm like a proper first team player, scoring every week. So I'm going to bring my yoga mat into the training ground at Norwich City in about 2001, 2002. What kind of reaction do you think I got when I did bringing it in from the 25 Neanderthal? Footballers, literally chaos. Me doing a bit of yoga, a bit of stretching to the side of the physio room. Honestly, they were battering me. They were physically throwing things. There was water, socks, bottles, verbal abuse, the amount of stuff that was happening just because I was doing stretching, right? On the yoga mat. So of course I went out training, put my yoga mat in the locker, went out training, came back in, they cut it up into 1,000 pieces. I'm like, fuck it. The more you get to know me, you realize I'm a stubborn little shit. And I'm like, there's no way they're beating me. So I'm off down to the shop, buying another yoga mat, brought it in second time. Anyway, same thing happens, did it out, doing my stretches, getting battered, water, throwing all sorts of things. Then I'm like a bit sneaky, right? I'm going to hide it this time. So I try to put it into one of the quiet places in the training ground. They found it, put it into one of those big metal bins, set it on fire. I'm like, right, going to buy a third one. Same thing happened, ruined the third. By the fourth time, I think they just got bored. But literally, I was in doing yoga. And what happened was I went from me doing it by myself until eventually one guy stuck his head around the corner and went, wee man, what are you doing? And I went, just doing some stretching, just stretching. And he's like, but why? And I was like, well, because I want to be, 100% ready to go and train rather than going out at 80%, doing the warm up to get the 100, and then I'll go.
Yep.
So that was the whole point. Anyway, what do you think happened after about 3 or 4 months of me doing yoga?
The squad are doing it.
Yeah, had about 6 or 7 coming in with me every single morning. But the point is, it's that trying to do something different, trying to learn, trying to improve, trying to go outside of the box, try not to be a sheep in football is really hard. because pretty much 99% are sheep. So just doing something different just shows, and that's a little insight into the lack of learning of most of the players that I've come across.
It's fascinating stuff, and like I say, it's important. I think that people get out there, you know, that kind of personal feeling, Paul, that you've gone through as a player. I'm going to transfer us over to the world of Tottenham. Sorry for anybody that doesn't want to talk about the world of Tottenham. We have to do it, I'm afraid. It is just what we are. Obviously, as a football club, Paul, you'll be acutely aware of this as playing for the football club. It's fair to say that we've been starved of real, genuine success for a long time. And I would say probably 80%, I don't know if Macca can agree with this here, because again, he's been lucky enough to miss a lot of this season here. The lucky sod. A lot of the conversations form around mentality of chairman, ownership, managers, players, coaching staff, you name it, any individuals. That is what's been formed a lot around the conversations that we have on podcasts, whether it's, you know, before games, after games, what happens in general. And I think, you know, a lot of people out there are kind of, I think, as you know, when we talk about this off there, there's a general feeling that the ownership currently have a lot to answer for as to why the mentality is maybe as low as it has been in terms of genuine trophy success when you look at the last 20, 25 years, or certainly since Daniel Levy has been the chairman of the football
Ricky,
club.
can I ask you on that? Just give me some insight, whether it's from your perspective or obviously I'm sure you speak to hundreds of thousands of Spurs fans who are watching every single week.
Yep.
Why do you think people perceive that to be the case? Why do you think that lots of fans believe it's the leadership or the ownership sort of level that is having a direct impact with the players and the manager on the pitch?
Absolutely. I'm happy to say this, and obviously, Lee, you're more welcome to come back off on this point as well. I think that this may be a bit contradictory to what I might say now in regards to the current manager in charge, but I think there's a feeling that we go down one route and then we've deviated and changed so much in the last 15, 20 years into really knowing what our identity is as a football club. I think, you know, we brand around the stadium to dare is to do, the game is about glory. But if we're being truthful to ourselves as Tottenham fans in the last 15, 20 years, there's been very little glory. There's been very little daring, very little doing. And I think the problem that we've had is over the course of the last 6, 7, 8 years, I think many at one point felt, certainly under Pochettino's tenureship as manager, that we were going somewhere. We were building something. You know, it was first the training ground, then it was the stadium. We had the squad to some degree that was looking to really push on and progress. And there's been arguments, I think, in the last 7, 8 years that when the club have maybe needed to take that plunge, when it's been about adding 2, 3 vital cogs to the wheel, whether that's players, whether that's staff behind the scenes, Tottenham simply haven't done that and have deviated away from the plan. And the reason why I say that I might be quite contradictory here is that right now, with regards to the current person in charge, who is overseeing yet another certain cycle at Tottenham, there's a big debate as to whether that person is the right person for where Tottenham are right now. Yeah. And as I think is the current, you know, headline topic, do we want to go through yet another change of cycle in terms of the manager? And I think that's even where me and Lee, bless him, who's not been on a huge amount this season, may disagree at certain points in terms of the managers that we have had and we haven't had. But maybe Lee, to bring you into this as well, conversation, I think one of your biggest frustrations, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is the fact that we haven't really ever stuck to a certain plan or a certain formula, which I may let you come in and take over from here.
And again, you know, I've probably been my most vocal about ENIC out and the board, Daniel Levy, over the last kind of probably 6, 8 months. And the irony is that you know, I've been calling them out saying they're going to bottle it, they're going to sack it, they're going to bottle it, they're going to bottle it, and I'm calling it bottling it because that's what they do every 18 months to 2 years, mostly 18 months. They sack a manager. We've had 16 in the last in their reign in 24 years. When you look at the reign of the most successful period, if you can call it success, because you didn't win anything, but the most successful period we've had under this ownership has been under 2 managers that have been here plus 4 years. That's Harry Redknapp and Maurizio Pochettino. So do the math and do the working out. And it doesn't take a genius, doesn't take Albert Einstein to work out that. Longevity in football obviously is very, very tough in the first place. But actually, when you do get it, you get a bit of success or you get a bit of stability in a football club, and it makes a difference. So, you know, there's nothing in history in this football club that suggests changing a manager every 12 to 18 months or 18 months to two years brings you success. Not one indication whatsoever. The only club, in my opinion, that has sustained that in this top level has been Chelsea, and that was when they were bankrolled by Roman Abramovich, who was actually bankrolling 60% of their wage bill whilst he was at the football club. That's the irony there as well, is that this board seems to want to be hiring ex-Chelsea managers because they think that that's going to work when they don't back them. And this doesn't go back to, this isn't just 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Look at all these managers on here. Like not one of them has been back to the people that they want. Jose Mourinho, for example, you know, he wants Fernandes. He gets Jedson Fernandes, not Bruno Fernandes. Do you know what I mean? Even Ange Postecoglou, like, absolutely critical for him was the guy from Chelsea.
Gallagher.
Gallagher, right? Gallagher. Didn't get Gallagher. They bought Archie Gray 40 million. Now, I'm not saying that Archie Gray's a bad player. I'm saying it's from a backing perspective. Now, they're definitely backing Ange in terms of keeping him in the job. There's no doubt about that. But you look at Antonio Conte, you look at Harry Redknapp. Harry Redknapp wanted Louis Saha. He wanted he gets Louis Saha and he gets
Hazard.
He wanted Hazard. He gets Louis Saha. Yeah, and this is again, when we talk about mentality, the mentality of what it feels like. And we the thing is, Paul, we don't know, because unlike yourself, obviously we ain't played for the club. Like I work for the old chairman, like, so I know what Lord Sugar's like. So I worked for him for 2.5 years. I've never worked with Daniel Levy and any of the board, but from an outside looking in, from a fan who pays, contrary to the reports that people might think, I pay for my season ticket, I pay for all the stuff that I do just like a normal punter, because I'm just a normal punting fan. For most of us, it looks like that they have a mentality of money first, profit first, then it becomes about there is a football team, and there's so many things that point to that which is, there used to be a football club over there. I mean, the great Keith Birkinshaw once said, and actually, so this isn't just about the last 2 years, 3 years. This is inherent in our club. When you go to our football club week in, week out, and feel that there's no statues, there's no past, there's no references to our recent past glory, because we haven't had any. And that's how it becomes a mentality thing, just like that little voice in your mind back when you said right at the beginning of the show, am I good enough to be here? Am I good enough to be here? When you walk around the stadium, it is incredible. The stadium's amazing. People come to the stadium, it is amazing. But there's no winning in this club. There's no winners at this club. And here's the thing. I saw a statistic on social media, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt. But I think it was something like, Rick, I think you might have posted it, to be fair. I think there was something like 50 players that have left Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
It's more than that, I think. Yeah,
more than that. Gone on to win respective trophies. Now, from a mentality perspective, the mentality is clear. Come to Tottenham to get your next big move. Don't come to Tottenham if you want to win something. You know it. I know it. Everyone in the comments knows it. The board knows it. The club knows it. The fans know it. The media knows it. And this is what we have to change. Like, the mentality has to change. We have to be authentic football first. That's what our why should be. Authentic football first, to be the best we can be at football. And then everything else will come. The bigger paychecks will come. The bigger sponsorships will come. Everything will come. But the club, the mentality, what it feels like, Mr. Levy and Donna Cullen and everyone else that's running the club, what it feels like to us is it is the reverse of that. We're going to do the money first. We're going to put the F1 in. We're going to do and I don't have a problem with any of that. I genuinely don't have a problem with doing that to generate cash, as long as it comes into here. I mean, you're looking at the wages to revenue ratio that we've got up on screen for listeners on audio. Tottenham Hotspur is the lowest wages to revenue ratio at 42%, by a long shot, so 11% lower than the next club, which is Arsenal. Now, that could be seen as a genius move from a business point of view if we are looking to sell, because you start to lean out your cost base in a business when you're looking to get the best possible price. And there's been lots of rumours about Qataris or whoever else being involved, so that might be the case. But the reality of the situation is that we've always been in that scenario. You go back and you mentioned Teddy Sheringham earlier. Paul, you played with him, right? In that era with Klinsmann and the team that we had under Ozzy and Jerry Francis and these guys. Them players, why did they move? Why did Berbatov move? Why did Defoe move? Why did Crouchy move? Why did Carrick move? They moved because the ambition of this football club doesn't meet theirs. Harry Kane, we just talked about him earlier. I will zip in a minute, I promise. Harry Kane is the best striker in the world. The best striker in the world, bar none. And this board sanctioned the deal to sell him. Now, I don't care. You can at me all day long if you want. Well, he wanted to leave. But I'm telling you now, if he had stayed and played them first 10 games under Ange, he'd have been signing a new contract by game 8. He would have. Now, we all know how it transpired after that, but he would have been signed a new contract by that point. Now, the reality of the situation is the bloke should be, and I hope he does, I hope he goes on and wins the Champions League, beats Arsenal in the final. That'd be hilarious. And wins the Ballon d'Or. That's what, that would be amazing. But the bloke probably won't even get considered about the Ballon d'Or because he's Harry Kane. Because do you know what? He does the business. He works hard. He's a family guy. He's not that Ronaldo-esque, the Messi-esque person. He's just the guy that does the business, and he'll probably be overlooked for it. But this board sanctioned that sale. They did. And okay, we've got Dominic Solanke. Great guy. I like him. Like Dominic Solanke. He's not Harry Kane, is he? And this is the classic mentality. Gareth Bale. Bye-bye. Become the best player in the world, score overhead kick in the Champions League final. This is a guy that was on of Modric, won the Ballon d'Or, used to play for Tottenham. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. So it is a bit of a rant, but it's just, I've been on for ages, so forgive me. But that's the reason. Like, all it takes is a new regime, or this current regime, to say football first. Let's go. We have the resources now. We have the stadium now. We have the facilities now. We have good players. We have everything in our psyche, if you like, to go and do well. We're gonna go football first, but they won't do it, Paul, Ricky, viewers and listeners. They won't do it because they never have.
Is there any, I don't know, stats on the money that's being paid, the fact that, however, whatever way the club's being run, it's not being bankrolled, is it, compared to, a Man City, even you look at like United, Liverpool, like Spurs aren't even in them conversations either. Whenever the best players come up and you're trying to sign the 100 million plus players or multiple times, the Real Madrids, it's like, they're just not even in that conversation. So that would probably be, I'm listening to everything you're saying. I'm like, yeah, I'm agreeing. Can't really argue. Can't really say, no, none of that's true. But my point is, if they're not spending that kind of money on those kind of players, it's going to be really, really hard to be competing with that level of your Man Cities, who's been so dominant, who bring in the best players, Liverpool, who've been bringing in the Van Dijks for 75 million, etc., etc.
Exactly.
So how can you compete?
Yeah, but I think my question probably back to that, Paul, is why charge the supporters? I think what he's probably seen as the second highest season ticket prices in Europe, if, like we're saying, they're unable to compete with respect to those clubs that are being bankrolled by, with some due respect, state nations. I think the reality is that this has been, I know, for many, many Tottenham fans, probably for a huge amount, probably one of the most trickiest seasons to have undergone, because right now, as we bring you on here, which is unique because of the fact me and Lee spoke about this show about 7-8 years ago before you came along on this show, that I don't think I've ever seen a split right now with regards to the manager, the players. I think the one thing that it feels a lot of the fans are unified on is that, as Lee touched upon there needs to be a change maybe at the very, very top of the football club to put football back to being first. And I think that's what we've seen. I think definitely this season, Lee, which I'm sure you agree on that. That's been, I think, the one thing that the fans have come together on, that when you talk about mentality, when you talk about looking to change, I think the fans now have kind of seen and viewed enough in these last however many years to perceive judgment, Paul, that nothing's going to really change, because here we are again. It feels at a similar cycle to the point with the manager where, look, by whatever it is, whether it's by tactics, by results, by whatever is out there, fans aren't happy. And I think fans are also voting with their feet. And maybe using a Legends game they had at the weekend is maybe not a fair barometer of that. But they, I think, had a 45,000 attendance a couple of years ago for a Legends game against Inter Milan. And with all due respect, I mean, look, you could argue it's the timing of the season when they had this game last week. I think there's about 15,000 in there, you know, to see some of the players that fans adore, the likes of Robbie Keane, Jermaine Defoe.
Yeah.
Listen, Berbatov, you know, again, it's one of those situations where a player that is left to go to Manchester United, and the way that was done, I'm not sure I could call that a legend side, but you probably see where I'm coming from, that you probably come on here, Paul, at a time for Spurs fans where they're at their most angry and most frustrated by what they perceive is the football club they absolutely love and adore, and they are not seeing the club that maybe they grew up. And that's similar to me, you know, again, when I was taken to White Lane for the first time, I actually believe that everything was possible. And I think to some degree, Pochettino made us believe at a certain period, everything was possible by getting to a Champions League final. When there was a long period on here, Lee, if you remember as well, I don't want to go too off topic here, that I think, you know, you could see the vision of what ENIC were trying to do in terms of, certainly during the Pochettino period where they were building upon second, third, they got to a Champions League final. But certainly it just feels as a fan, Paul, in this last, for me, 5, 6, 7 years, there's been a real lack of direction as to where the club is heading. And we have tried so many kind of different types of managers, and also a lot of different types of style of play, and also players that brought into the football club, where we're at a point where, yet again, you know, we've got players that have been here under the last 3, 4 managers. So that's, I think, why at the moment, Paul, there's a lot of blurred lines as to when we talk about that word mentality, that is severely lacking a winning one within the football club.
Who's the best example of a club you would like to follow? Oh,
that's a good question.
Well, for me, I mean, I want to be Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. I think maybe this is part of the issue for Tottenham, but I think that the white kit, the Tottenham Hotspur, we're the only Hotspur in world football. So I don't think we should be following any one and any model. I think when you look at the Pochettino era and the model that was under there that you just referenced, we're not too dissimilar to that model now. Arsenal kind of followed that model as well. We talk about the cycles of the two North London rivals, and actually Arsenal followed the Pochettino kind of cycle. I think if you look at a Liverpool cycle, I think it's very hard to look away from that, where they had a sliding doors moment when we absolutely ruined Dejan Lovren in Wembley, and we smashed them 4-1. Dele Alli scoring, Kane turning Lovren inside out, you know, and the mentality of that football club was, hey, we need to do something about this. And they went and bought the best goalkeeper in the world. They went and bought the best centre-back in the world. You referenced him earlier, Van Dijk, for 75 million. And they added to what was a good crop of players that they had coming through, which they've always had. I mean, look, it's hard to compare us to a Liverpool, and I don't think we should compare. No. I don't think Tottenham or Paul, Lee or Ricky should compare yourselves or ourselves to anyone else. You are who you are, and I think that's who Tottenham are. But when you're looking at kind of a blueprint, if you like, to kind of go, hey, how does this look? You know, you have Liverpool hard to not look at. I mean, they've just got rid of their manager, who's been their manager for 8 years, and they're about to win the league with a new bloke. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened either. Yeah, no. When somebody's been in there for so long, like look at Sir Alex Ferguson, look at even Poch here, look at Arsene Wenger. Or the Man United have never recovered from Fergie. You could argue. So again, I do think that it is a collective as well when we talk about mentality. I mean, a lot of people aren't going to like this, but I was going to ask you, Paul, earlier about, do fans affect their players' voices in their head. The fans affect it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a massive believer in energy. Everything is energy, right? And we have the ability to not make energy. I think Albert Einstein said something along the lines: we don't make energy, but we have the ability to change it. So we choose if we change that energy. So as fans, we choose to go into the stadium with good energy or bad energy, right? Or indifferent energy. Now, energy gives, if it's a positive energy, and people say I'm toxic, was it toxic positivity or whatever? But the reality is, if you're positive, if you have that positive energy, then ultimately in the whole stadium has that positive energy, then it gets onto the pitch. Does that make a difference? And I think Newcastle are an amazing example of that. Now, under Mike Ashley, there's no way they are winning that final. There's no way. They're not winning it. Like, come and argue with me if you want, by anybody. There's no way they're winning that final under Mike Ashley tenure. But now they've got their state-owned. It's got actually nothing to do with the money. It's just the fact that the mentality is we must win now. We have to win now. We are winners now. And that's changed it. And Eddie Howe, most of us fans in here would have said, no way to Eddie Howe come to Tottenham. Yeah, he's just won a trophy before we have. I mean, and this, I think, is a mentality thing. Do you guys agree?
It's hard because you're mentioning Liverpool, and of course they've got the Fenway Sports Group, who have been unbelievably successful in American sport before they dipped their toe in the water of the Premier League. So you're bringing a lot of acumen, a lot of business nous and know-how with a huge bank account into Liverpool, and you're going, oh, Liverpool have done well. Well, yeah, for 30 years, Liverpool were pretty shit, or for 20 years at least. You know, I remember seeing this, just like this massive club that won all these European trophies. They just had the Spice Boys and nothing was happening for them. They were getting battered by United every time. And so, and whether it is cycles or whether it's the fact that you've just got, it's a business. And I think this is what fans don't like to hear. It's that it's the reason why, this is an interesting one. It's the reason why the Glazers bought United. What did they buy them for? Like 600 million or something like that? Or maybe let's even say 700-800 million. Yep. And because they're business, because they, well, who knows? I don't know whether they love United or hate United, but let's just say they don't give a toss about the football club. As an investment, they're buying it for 800 million. And then straight away they take out the loan and service and the debt. So they've got whatever, a couple of 100 million out of it, a few 100 million in debt. They haven't done anything with it for like 10, 12 years. Now what's it worth? That's 600 million assets now worth 6 billion. If Chelsea's worth 4 billion, United must be worth 6 billion. So it's all perspectives. Now you can probably say Daniel Levy is a massive Spurs fan. He wants them to do well, but obviously not at all costs. And so I suppose what I'm trying to understand from you, Lee, is what is football first? Is football first go and spend the 100 million on Declan Rice or 120 million and don't bring him to Arsenal, bring him to Spurs? Is that
it's
what
winning,
is that
it's
what
winning
it is?
though, isn't it? It's winning though, isn't it? Paul McVeigh. I mean, I'd
Well,
like
it
to
is,
think
but at what price? Is it? Do you have to do a Abramovich? So it's funny, all the clubs that we're talking about, Abramovich bankrolled Chelsea. You're saying Newcastle hadn't got a touch of a trophy for 60 years. Oh, by the way, they're owned by the richest country in the world. The sovereign wealth of Saudi Arabia now own Newcastle United. Can you see the correlation of why these teams? Can you see why Man City are completely dominating the leagues?
I do understand
why
that.
PSG just came and did the exact same thing to them because they've got the Qatari. So it's like, it's really, really hard to try and say, oh, yeah, but we'd love to do well. But my question is not who should Spurs be right now, but give me an example of someone that's in Spurs ballpark that should be doing better than Spurs.
As of right now, in terms of when we look at
or even in the last 5 years, like who is it? Who's the kind of who's the blueprint? You mentioned the word blueprint, Lee, didn't you? Who's the blueprint of what Spurs should be doing? Yes, I get frustration. Yes, I get there's an ownership in place. Yes, I get there's been all these amazing players. But if you had Harry Kane, Bale, Modric, if you go through all the players that you have, if you kept them all, it's Real Madrid. It's not Spurs.
No, but the thing is,
again, sorry, just quickly. I think again, this is the point. It's not about one thing. It's not about, hey, Daniel Levy needs to go because he hasn't spent 65 million on Dembele. He did spend 65 million on Dembele.
It's not about money.
And he did pay him 200 grand a week.
Yeah.
But what he didn't do, or what he hasn't done, is when we needed it, Harry Redknapp at the point of January going, I just need 2 more to get us a title challenge. He gives him Ryan Nielsen and Louis Saha. That is the mentality of can't really make this work right now. When you talk, and you're right, when you talk about at what cost, look at Leeds. Of course, we didn't want to look at Leeds. Peter Ridsdale era, they threw it all in there. They said let's all go, and it might be the same with Forest. Forest might do the same thing. They're doing really well at the moment. It might happen with them. And then we'll come back to, but Spurs are very sustainable. But for what? Is if the club come out and say, we only want to be a top 6 club and be sixth, and that's it, and we don't care about winning anything, and we just want to be that, that's okay, because then we're doing really well. But the fans don't want that. And actually, I think a lot of fans, and I'm only speaking from the people that I know and interact with on this show, a lot of fans don't want our club to go bust. Of course they don't. But there's been plenty of clubs that have won. Arsenal as an example. I mean, I know you've just talked about Manchester United and Liverpool with being bankrolled, but they're sustainable. They're completely sustainable clubs. You've just seen a wage bill, for example. So you can do it. We've also been told 6 years ago we opened this stadium, it was going to be a game changer. 6 years ago, we're 14th. So what's the game changing? Taking us from a top 4 club to a bottom club, bottom 10 club. So I think I don't think. What I'm saying is I don't want us to go bankrupt, and it's not at all costs. But I don't think anyone is thinking that we will go bankrupt. We've got the highest pay the highest season ticket prices in Europe, or the second highest season prices in the US. We've got the second highest revenue generating match day fees. We've got the lowest wage to revenue ratio.
And with all due respect, a chairman that pays himself the highest director pay in the whole of the Premier League. I think that's what again does irk certain fans out there.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of statistics that actually showcase that there's a bit more to be able to do. We're not in breach of PSR. We've got the ability. And again, you know better than I do, right? It isn't about transfer fees.
No,
transfer fees are not the issue. It's the wages.
It's not about
one's
money.
Coming to Tottenham on 80 grand a week. They're not coming. Yeah, they need 300. Rashford's on 300 grand a week. He can't even hit a barn door. You're talking about Kane. Rashford can't hit a barn door. He's on 300 grand a week. Like, how are we expected to change our entire wage structure to get these players in? Because as you said earlier, money talks. Best players. Look, British cycling is a perfect example. Ineos, perfect example in British cycling. Obviously, Sir David Brailsford is now at Man United. It's a perfect example for me. You get the funding, you put the money in, you win. Same as the state-owned clubs and so on and so forth. The point I'm making is, are Tottenham underachieving this season? Yeah, in terms of league position. But as a football club, in terms of where we are, what we spend, what we do, we're about right. We're about 5th in the league in terms of our average finish since the Premier League started over 32 years ago. And we're 6th in the trophies won table of all time. That's about Spurs. And what our frustration is as Spurs fans is that we don't want to be 5th and 6th. No. We want to be 4th and 3rd. And we want a board that wants to take us there. That's what we want. And I'm hearing today, sorry, finally, I will shut up, I swear. You have to mute me. I might drop off in a minute. But I'm hearing today the Club World Cup, if Chelsea and or Man City go and win it, they get 90 million in revenue just by winning one trophy. Now, that's winning the trophy, not taking part in it, Mr. Levy. You've got to put it out there to be able to get it back. And that's business. You put in 3 quid in the top, you get 30 quid out the bottom. That's 10 times. You put £100 in, £1,000 back, £1,000 in, £10,000 back. That's business. And he knows that better than anyone. So start putting it into the football. I think the problem is they know that they can make more money in the top and out the bottom on other activities than the football. And that's why I'm talking about football first. because it can be done because there's other clubs doing it. Leicester won the league, Leicester won the FA Cup. Not Forest
We're going to have won the FA Cup. Birmingham have won the League Cup.
Right.
It can be done. And I think also it goes back to that point as well. This under ENIC's tenure, we've reached 15 semi-finals, 6 finals. We've had 1 trophy. It does feel that there's this kind of lack of a winning mentality around the club. And with all due respect, players who had to leave the club to go and get their success. And I think that, again, kind of ties into, Paul, as we talk about the frustration. It isn't all just about money. It's not about spending the highest transfer fee, because with all due respect, Tottenham have gone and broken their transfer fee on a number of occasions. Yeah. And to be honest with you, the players that they brought in haven't always adequately been the right fit. And again, recruitment's that's another story.
That's actually probably one of the biggest parts that needs to be discussed, because that is, and I'd also throw into the mix that everything we've talked about is kind of ownership and expenditure, but you've also got to talk about the players, the performance, the underperformance, the managers.
That would also be the point, Paul. When you're looking at the playing squad right now, and the fact that I kind of, said this, that it must weigh heavily on these players. They're at a football club that hasn't won for such a long time. And, you go back to when you were, again, a player in the Premier League at that young age, where you were questioning yourself just as an individual. I do wonder whether the pressure on the Spurs shirt weighs so heavily on some of these young players, and just general players at Tottenham, that they just simply can't get over the line, because the pulling of the shirt in terms of that lack of winning success and history in comparison to other clubs, I think does have a massive, massive effect when it comes to the players. When you look at some of our performances in cup competitions, Mackie, you've been there, the likes in the FA Cup games, Sheffield United away, whether it be at Anfield, whether it be Aston Villa in the Cups this season. By the nature of our performances in these cup competitions, the club, the players, there's a stage fright there. There's with all due respect, an unknowing as to how to get over the line, because we haven't got over the line for such a long time, Paul. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I would also say then, but that mentality is being almost spread across, like you just mentioned, the 15 semi-finals and the 6 finals. It's almost like, how's that possible? Because it's completely different players and completely different managers, completely different staff. So I'm not sure that it can spread. It's not like it's something that you just kind of will leave this in the change room for the next manager, we'll leave it for the next player, and the next pass it on. And I don't know that players coming into the club will be thinking, because let's say you two are like emotionally damaged, right? If in my psychological opinion.
That's one thing we could definitely agree on. That's definitely 100% emotionally damaged. Definitely 1,000,000,000%.
But and that's the thing, is that's not what players are thinking. Players don't have 30, 40 years of hurt and disappointment going into the season, and they're not going in going, oh, how long has this club not been since one? The
so you don't think, Paul, in a player's mind, that the lack of a success at a football club, that doesn't in any way impede on a player's confidence? Don't believe that?
I think everything you've discussed today is just projection. It's just your perception through your lens of the world, of how you see it. Because as you said, you went there as a boy, and in your magical world as a young kid, anything is possible at Spurs. But that's not reality. That's not the absolute ruthless, ridiculously competitive nature of professional elite sport. That's not what happens. And everybody trying their best, and you throw as much money as it as you want. And you can bring in the best players with the best coaches, with the best stadium, the best training ground in the world, and it doesn't guarantee jack shit. So all of these things that you're putting together with an argument for the case get you in the ring. Like, it allows you in the Coliseum to try and fight for your life. And then it comes down to the tiniest little things in games, like whether it's a game at Anfield or Sheffield United. And it's all of the other elements of why it is so ridiculously hard, A, to be a professional footballer, B, to try and compete as a team in the Premier League against all these other teams. Because think of why have Man United not done anything for 15 years? Why have they not done, or 12 years, whatever it is? Because it's ridiculously hard. And that's Man United. Why did Liverpool, one of the biggest clubs, do it for so long of not having it? Spurs, I think there's just so many elements. Yes, there's money. Yes, there's, like you're saying, a little bit of the mentality that might be there. Yes, there's the thing that kind of, I don't particularly agree about the shirt weighing heavy, because if you went to Arsenal, they'd probably say the same thing. Or if you go to Chelsea, or if you go to whatever club, Newcastle, I'm sure 60 years, they're all thinking, oh, we don't win trophies. I just think it comes down to the best players. The best players playing together are more likely to win, which is why Chelsea were dominant whenever Abramovich was doing it. Why Man City had been dominant, because they kept bringing in the best players. Why Real Madrid keep winning the Champions League, because they have the best players. Doesn't always happen, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to happen. And Spurs haven't been in the ballpark of bringing in the best players to Spurs for a long time. So how can you compete? And as I get it, yes, I understand where you're coming from, Lee, around the, on average being 6th and 14th this year, etc. But you're still talking about, if you think you can win the Premier League, well, the strategy for that is overspending, bringing in the best players, and someone state funded or whoever else funded is bankrolling your team. And that just simply doesn't happen at Spurs, which is why I completely understand why so many people are frustrated. And I know so many Spurs fans know them, for a long, long time. And to tell me, and to go through the exact same thing that you two are saying, I get it. I really get it. But this is this side of the line when you're going, why is that player not doing better? I actually saw an interview with Ange. I know we haven't talked about him, but I'm sure we will at some stage before we wrap up. But I saw an interview with Ange, and he was interviewed by a journalist. And as typical journalists do, that ask him some, inept, ridiculously bland question. And he's just like, mate, I've been doing this for a long, long time. I'm pretty good. Like I'm in this position because I kind of know what I'm doing. And yet the perception of what you say, maybe 50% of the Spurs fans worldwide are going, this guy hasn't got a clue what he's doing. It's like, he kind of does. It's because he's been doing it for 30 years and he's had loads of success and he's got the appointment, he has the understanding, and yet he's working within a framework and parameters that are making it unbelievably difficult to do his job. But he's still very good at what he does. And lots of the players are still very, very good. But it's just very, very difficult to do it. Now, why they're not doing it consistently? $64,000 question.
Well, I mean, on that $64 million question, I am very conscious of time. I know we've got to wrap up very, very soon. Lee, you've not been on here for a while, so it's time that I take some of the heat off me and pass it on to you, and then we'll ask Paul's quick question on the manager. Look, we know it hasn't been great under Ange Postecoglou this season. We do currently sit 14th in the Premier League table. We've had 15 defeats in our last 29 league games. The latest one, of course, to Fulham before the international break. It wouldn't be an international break if Spurs don't lose. They've lost the last 6 before an international break. We've had, as I mentioned, 15 defeats in the last 29 games, 11 defeats in the last 15 games against the top half teams with only 2 wins. We've won 27 games from a possible 57. Just even see the top half now. We're trailing that by 9 points with Bournemouth sitting in 10th. Lee, you've been with me for a very, very long time on this show. You've been with me for a long, long time when you consider, Pochettino took the club
too
to
long
a
after you've read them stats out, Rick. I'm depressed now, mate. I was having a nice time.
Well, I was about to say, also, Lee, I mean, when you forget, Pochettino took the club to a Champions League final. 5 months later, he was sacked. Mourinho was sacked 5 days before a cup final. You had Conte that was sacked when Spurs were sitting in 4th. You had the chance of that game before to go to 3rd. You've said all season, Lee, they're going to bottle it, they're going to bottle it, they're going to bottle it. But even at that point, are you surprised Ange Postecoglou is still at the club given this horrendous damning stats that he's got against him at the moment?
Well, firstly, the stats are horrendous. I love stats, right? And they're bad reading, aren't they?
And you're a stat man.
You could have put some balance on there by saying that we smashed City 4-0, smashed Villa 4-1, smashed United 3-0 away. We've had
just no, I've been cutting Lee off there. We've lost Lee mid-flow. Look, I will qualify on that point. He has obviously had this season probably one of the worst. I was going to say, Lee, just to qualify on your point that you come back in, he has had one of the worst injury crises that we've ever seen in this football club. You will know there's a lot of talk around where those injuries have also come from and how they've occurred. But, I mean, are you still at a point where you think this is still the right man for Tottenham?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a leading question, right? Is he the right man for Tottenham? Is a different answer to, and it's a hindsight answer to go back to Paul's point that Andrew was making in the press conferences. He was the right man for Tottenham, wasn't he? When we were winning 2.7 points per game in the first 10 games, he was the right man. He was the right man for us when we beat Liverpool in the 92nd minute. And my mum was in the stand with me doing da na 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 na. He was the right man for Spurs, wasn't he, when we smashed Man City away 4-0 before they went on their crisis. So look, I mean, I think without arguing about it, it doesn't matter whether it doesn't matter whether I'm in Ange in or Ange out, or if I'm an ink in or an ink out, or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is, the statistics are a joke. Like, they're terrible for this football club. What I will say moving forward is that there is 0 point in sacking Ange, because there's been a debate going on in the comments since we started the show about who will be our next manager. Literally been going. It's still going now. From all, I love the conversation, and this is the reality. I think Ange Postecoglou. There was a debate about who should be our next manager when Ange came in, right? And Ange was not even on the list. Who did we have? Remind me. Did we have a Julian Nagelsmann? Did we have a Poch return? Did we have a Graham Potter? I mean, it's the same thing again, but now we're talking about Thomas Frank. I mean, do me a favour. We're now talking about Silva. Do me a favour. This is a guy at Silva, for example, who has been at Everton and finished 15th, and now we're going, oh yeah, he's better than Ange. Like, do me a favour. So again, it comes back to, I can't sit here and say sack Ange, because he's only been here 18 months, like only been here 2 full seasons yet, and I've just criticised the board for keeping sacking people for every 18 months. Sometimes in football and business and in life, you have to go through utter shit to get through to doing something really well. And so people, oh yeah, but Lee, you're deluded, as if we're going to do well next season with Ange. Well, we might. What happens if we don't have any injuries? What happens if we keep our back 5? Look, you're biting your friend. You want Areola, right? We know that you want it. He's sitting 10th now.
It's 10th. Not joy. You know what?
You don't want him anymore because he's 10th. It doesn't matter. You can bring in Areola. You can bring in Frank. You can bring in any of these managers. The same thing is going to happen. They're going to have to go through a cycle. And maybe, like Ange did in his first season, they might finish 5th and we might go, okay, that's okay. They're going to have a bad time at some point when they're rebuilding this squad. That is the reality of the situation. And that's why I pointed out Liverpool earlier, because Liverpool didn't have, when they changed their manager, didn't have a bad time. In fact, they've had a fantastic time of it, and hopefully they go on to win. So, look, I'm still Ange in because one, I do actually believe that you can win the lot. I actually believe that. And delusional or what? I think he can. I think he can go on and I think he can do it, because he's done it, to Paul's point, everywhere he's been. He's done it. Same as Conte. Oh, by the way, did Conte win anything at Spurs? Oh, no, he didn't. Where is he now? Where is he in the league right now in his respective club? Did Jose win anything? No. What did he do straight after leaving Tottenham? What did he do? Oh, he won a cup, did he, with Roma? I mean, you could not make this stuff up. They're not bad managers. They're not bad players. It's the framework and structure that they're working within.
Where do you stand, Paul? What do you think of Ange Postecoglou?
I think I'd actually agree lots with Lee there. I think I think he's definitely got something very unique that I haven't seen before across most coaches and managers. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but definitely unique. My question as Lee was talking there was, what happens if you brought in Pep? You think Pep could change his team into a league winning team?
Pep's having a shot at City without Rodri. Like, do you know what I mean, Lily? Right, let's be fair.
So the point is it's like all of those things, like the crisis of all the injuries, like that is just horrendous what's happening. Like, you can't imagine taking all those players out of the Liverpool team. Alisson, Van Dijk, you just going, well, how can you compete when your best players aren't playing? So I definitely think he's not an issue. Not an issue. He's not the issue at Spurs. And to try and dumb it down and say there is the one issue that's going to cause, or make the difference, I think is just too simplistic. It's too complex and it's too complicated.
I think I've said I don't think Ange Postecoglou is the only issue at Tottenham, but I also do feel as well, and it's where again I think it's important we make this point, is that there is a feeling that because we've just chopped and changed managers over 18 months, we just have to stick with one. And the reality is that, but are we sticking with the right one? And I think that's a really important question that people should ask themselves, and everyone should have
that would be ironic, wouldn't it? That we've criticised the board for so many years for stick with the managers, and then the one they do stick with is the wrong bloody one. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up, could you?
But this is the argument at the moment where, that's where, again, there's a lot of frustration. But I do appreciate this topic could really spiral out of control, which you don't want it to, because, I mean, again, look, Spurs have got the opportunity to win a trophy at the end of this season. If Ange Postecoglou does deliver the Europa League, he will have been Tottenham's most successful manager since 1984. And I think if Ange wins that trophy, you can't sack him. You can't sack Ange Postecoglou who wins that trophy.
This is what Paul was saying earlier. The fine lines, isn't it, between a match or something that happens in the player. Like if for example, if it's not ruled handball in the Champions League final, as an example, if that ain't ruled because it weren't handball, let's be fair. But if that is not ruled handball in the Champions League final, is that final different? I know it's if buts and maybes, but it is fine margins at this level. And actually, if Ange goes on to win the Europa League, regardless of whether you want to sack him or you can sack him or whatever, he goes down in history as our most successful manager since 1984. So you could not make this stuff up.
But does that not just come into the fact then that you can't go, all of these people and whatever percentage of the Spurs fans worldwide are going, this guy's not the right guy for us, and I don't know if you need to stick with someone, but do we know he's the right guy? And because he wins this one game, you're saying, oh, he's the right guy?
But that's another problem, I think, as well. That again is another problem. If you can flip your opinion just on one game, that is also
and basically your opinion isn't worth anything. That's the difference? Is it an educated opinion, or is it just because you're emotional?
Yeah. You know what I want to ask very, very quickly before we do wrap up? I mean, Lee, look, there's a lot of speculation right now around the likes of Christian Romero, who Atletico Madrid are currently pursuing him at the end of this season, we're led to believe. And again, there's always been that feeling around Romero with regards to kind of what his priorities are at Tottenham. It's been about playing for Argentina rather than Spurs. I did read something crazy that I have to share from earlier with regards to Romero's minutes. Romero's minutes in the last 4 days, Lee, he's at 180 minutes for Argentina. And Romero's minutes in the previous 102 days has been 231, which is quite staggering, really, with regards to maybe his availability for Tottenham than it is for Argentina. There's been links to Kulusevski maybe being a target for AC Milan. I suppose to kind of close on these kind of subjects as we are, is how hardly will it be to convince and keep these players and to give them the confidence Tottenham is the right place for their career to progress, given the lack of silverware and also given the fact of the domestic form that we've showed this season. As we've touched upon the fact that, success doesn't come easy at a club like Tottenham. And these guys like Romero, like Kulusevski, Bentancur, they're approaching their prime easily in a Spurs shirt or in their general career.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go quickly with this one because I think Paul gives us some great insight from a professional footballing perspective. But the story is old as time, isn't it, with Tottenham Hotspur? I mean, let's be fair about it. I mean, even Liverpool, Trent Alexander-Arnold was about to go to Real Madrid. He's one of their own. If that was Spurs, would be up in arms. Or just was up in arms earlier about Harry Kane leaving. So it's a story as old as time. That's football. I think, the reality is the bloke's a World Cup winner and he's won the Copa America twice. The bloke is actually a winner. We've had winners in this squad, individual winners in this squad, in this Ange team, before Ange, in the Poch era. We've had winners all over the pitch. People are telling me there's no leaders. We've got winners. This bloke's a leader. He's a vice captain. He's won the World Cup. He's won 2 Copa America. The bloke's a leader. There's no doubt about it. can we keep him? Not when Real Madrid come calling, no. I don't think Ronaldo still left Man United, didn't he, when they come calling? And Man United were good back then when he was there. You know, when the powerful clubs, and this is the point I'm making, is that he's Argentinian, he's South American, you want to play for a Real Madrid. I don't think Atletico will happen. I think a Real Madrid may happen for him. And actually, when he comes out and talks about ambition, it's the same story as Bale. It's the same story as Modric. It's the same story as Berbatov. It's the same story as Kane. I mean, again, I can be called emotional, but I'm just passionate about the fact that it's the same story over and over and over again. No one comes out and says, "Oh, Chelsea lack ambition." No one comes out and says that. You walk through the powers of the corridors of power at Chelsea, you feel winning. Yes, bankroll, but you feel winning. Like you feel winning when you walk through the powers of the corridor of power at Man City, Man United, at Liverpool, 20 titles, powerhouse, Arsenal. You don't feel that, Spurs. You don't feel the. You don't. I walk through them doors. You don't feel that. It's not there. It's not that winning mentality. And when you've got a guy like Romero, who's a passionate winner, hard-earned winner, whatever, he wants to win. And if you don't think he's going to win at Spurs, he'll leave. Simple as that. You know, that's the reality. And then this project hasn't got off the ground well enough for him to be able to stay. I don't see there's any. Again, I'm not Mr. Negative here, but I don't see there's any way Romero signs a new contract in the current form of Tottenham Hotspur. I just don't see it. Paul, what do you think?
I agree. I think those players, the reason why they're moving on is they want to be playing Champions League. Big thing. They want to be at the best competitions, which is why he's already, won lots of them with his country. The players that there comes a point very quickly, especially with like Premier League international players now, where finance is kind of irrelevant. Yes, it's nice earning big money, but they've earned big money probably from their young kids, so they're probably financially set no matter what. So everything these days is mostly, and not all the time, but mostly it's, can I play in the Champions League? Can I get in a team where I've got a chance to win the league? Am I somewhere in that ballpark? Knowing that there could be a couple of teams in Spain, 4 or 5 teams in England, a few teams in Germany. There's only a few teams give you that opportunity, and he's at that level where, yes, sometimes you see him and he's absolutely amazing. Other times he's like, oh my God, I can't believe he's just done that for such a top player, and he does stupid things. But still, he's at that level that one good offer from another big club, I think he's gone.
I think it's a really important point to close us on, Paul, actually. Right. I think this is where, again, fans have got that frustration that it does feel for a lot of fans out there we're like a stepping stone to a bigger club, or as Macca put it earlier, we're a stepping stone to winning trophies elsewhere. That's a really hard thing for a lot of, I think, the older school, hardcore Spurs fans that travel home and away to accept when they've seen this club win trophies, they've seen this club be successful. I think it's really sad when you see players that have got such potential and such talent that are going to leave the football club and fulfill those ambitions elsewhere. That's what's, I think, really, really hard. When we talk about mentality, when we talk about winning and success, I think that's the really hard thing at the moment, that they're watching players come into the football club where they can see they've got talent and they're leaving elsewhere because they don't feel they can fulfill what they want to at the football club. That's the damning indictment where we are right now. Is that just an acceptance of where Tottenham are, do you think, in general at the moment?
I think it's hard to argue with that, mate. Listen, if they're not competing for the league, which they're not, if not competing for trophies, which pretty much aren't, then why would you stay? Why would you stay at Spurs, considering it's such a short career? And once you get that opportunity, because they don't come along very often, those opportunities for players that go to, big clubs, get big moves. It's very rarely you have the Mbappes that every time he moves, he's going to go for a big move and it's going to be massive. Like Jude Bellingham's career is going like that. Every time he goes somewhere, it's going to be massive and world breaking and all the rest of most of the players are like, they'll get that big move and they might have a couple of years at a big club. Very few people are like Paul Scholes, Giggsy. You're at the top club for your entire career. It's too hard. That's why go back to the very start of the conversation, just absolutely take my hat off to those guys that Messi's, Ronaldo, even Harry Kane talked about him so much. just got to take your hat off, because I absolutely tried my best for nearly 20 years to be the best player that I could be. I only had 20 games in the Premier League and only scored 2 goals. And that was me trying my best for that long. Yeah. And just know how hard it is, and just go, well, imagine you actually played in a team that got into the Champions League. Imagine you played in a team that had a chance to win the league. Imagine playing the team that won the league once. Imagine you playing the team that won a couple of leagues and the champ. Imagine you played in the United team that dominated everything. And it's like, it's so unbelievably hard, which is why we get so passionate about it. We love the sport. We just love talking about it, because it's so difficult to do. And whenever you see your team, the players within your team being at that level, it's like no greater feeling.
One last one to close.
Sorry, I just want to comment on that, because I think it's important for Paul, from my mentality perspective, is that, and out of them 20 appearances in the Premier League and them 2 goals you score, probably puts you in the top 1% of people that have tried to do it, which is amazing. So there's not, I only did 20, I only scored twice. You're in the top 1%.
Yeah, man. It's all relative, isn't it?
Amazing.
I'm talking about. So if I was to be really arrogant, and if I really wanted to try and talk about, I could be like, I was in one of the 0.000 elite performers in the world, because of the billions of people try to do it, and I did it, and very few people did it.
Yeah.
Once you get to that, it's almost like you expand out that level. How many people have got that level? Where was I? I was down here. Where was Ryan Giggs? He won 9 league titles and 2 champs. I mean, it's all levels at that point. So
you still did it.
That's why I love it.
You still did it.
Do you believe?
Just on the trophies, just quickly, right? Just to put some context around it, Tottenham Hotspur won 17 major trophies in their history. Yeah. And then when you break it down in decades, I've only gone back to the 80s, right? So you look at the 80s, right? We won 3 trophies in the 80s. We won 2 in the 90s. We won 1 in the zeros. Yeah. We won 0 in the 10s, and we won 0 in the 20s. So again, just going back to one, it's scary, but 2, the mentality of us fans, including myself, is like, we should be win, but we shouldn't really. We're kind of where we should be, because we're not bankrolled by a state club and a state country and all that sort of stuff. The reality is, we've actually only won 6 trophies since 1981. Yeah, 6. Now, when you put it into context against all these other clubs, Man City, Chelsea as an example, of literally what my father-in-law was a Chelsea season ticket holder, right? He said to me the other day, he said, I said, how are you feeling about Europe and all that? And he's like, it's useless trophies, all that sort of stuff. He said, but to be fair, because they're in the Conference League, he said, to be fair, if we win that, he said, we'd have won every single trophy that actually is possible to win. That's also crazy. And then backed up with a stat that Chelsea, the great Chelsea, haven't won a trophy for 4 years. I mean, get your head around it. It's just a nightmare, isn't it?
I've got to say, I mean, we're getting lots of comments coming in, Paul, how much people have really, really enjoyed this conversation, because it's factual. It's with somebody that has been there and done it and actually experienced what it has been like. I mean, probably a final question to ask you, Paul, is do you believe that success breeds success? And what I mean by that is, if Tottenham were to go on and win the Europa League, is that a possibility where that could set a new trend within Tottenham, that suddenly they are winners and they can build on that, rather than it being a one-off success? Because we have seen clubs that have won one-off trophies and never been able to replicate that and actually fall away. I mean, how much do you believe success breeds success? And you're more to tie that up with regards to what you're also doing at the moment.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, but it is definitely that fork in the road. It's like Leicester City. Wow, what an unbelievable achievement. What did they do? Well, okay, maybe the FA Cup, but they've never done anything at that level. No. And if I go back to the very start of this conversation, me seeing my mate Rory Allen, who was a first-year pro with me at the time, scoring against that great Man United team, that for me suddenly opened up the possibilities that I could do this. And I think that's where if it does open up the possibilities of Spurs can win trophies, the next season it'll be, okay, we're going to try and win a trophy. We could try and go and win a trophy because it's real, it's tangible, they've experienced it, they've done it. But of course, Newcastle might not win anything for another 60 years. Who knows? But that is, again, the challenge. So it's the fork in the road. But yes, absolutely. By doing it, it opens up that possibility. Much more likely.
Yeah. I've got to say, Lee, it's been a real fascinating chat, right? Because, again, when we're speaking to somebody that has been through that cycle, not only as a player, but actually works in psychology, it does make you realise that it's not one thing, it's a magnitude of things as to why maybe the club hasn't had that success. But I do know, again, just to bring that balance out there for a lot of Spurs fans, home and away, that watch this show, I do know that there's a real calling, as you know, Lee, out there for a change at the very, very top of the football club, which they believe, look, there may not be any guarantee if you change the ownership, but there's a change of voice, there's a change of feeling that maybe that is what this club maybe needs to propel it back to what many know it was, where it was a club that was fighting to be the very, very best on the football pitch rather than off it, Macca.
Well, Newcastle, a perfect example of that. What you've just said there. Under Mike Ashley, they were getting relegated. They were bottom five most seasons in the Premier League. You know, they gave it a go back in the 90s, didn't they? Under the great Bobby, and they were an amazing team to watch. In fact, and Bobby Robson type teams, you know, go for it mentality, score more goals than the opposition type scenario. You know, very, very similar in that. You know, you'd have been playing at Spurs then, Paul, in the round when they were going for the league. I think Newcastle.
It's when we signed David. It's whenever I first met David.
Of course. And, you know, Alan Shearer up front, you know, great ever Premier League goal scorer, didn't win anything with Newcastle. You know, all of them same permutations. They're very similar in that sense. You know, the fact that Spurs have stayed in the Premier League and Newcastle dropped in and out. But change of ownership, and yes, it's by a state, and yes, it's by a lot of money. But a change of ownership brings a change of mentality and a change of doing something or doing something different. Sometimes when you have to change, you have to create a crisis. Sometimes you have to create a crisis in business.
I'm bloody going for it this season, Macca, I know.
Exactly. And the thing is, and this is why I'm saying about sticking with Ange per se, and not just you know, firing him and getting somebody else in, because, you know, the person that comes back in still has to pick up the same mess. This, you know, Ange as a process, he's not finished that process. And if he's finished the process, i.e. a 3-year contract, which is what the process was, and he still hasn't done anything, then fair enough. The trouble with that, with all of us, Paul, from a Spurs point of view, is that we are tired. We are tired of waiting.
Yeah, we are tired.
Tired of being the jokes. We are fed up with losing. We are fed up with not winning. We are fed up with having Louis Sahas and Ryan Nielsen's when we should be having better players come to our club. Yeah. And actually, I will say this, you know, for the board, you know, sometimes they have signed amazing players. You know, maybe it's on fluke, maybe it isn't. But we had a team of Keane, Berbatov, Defoe. We had
Van der Vaart, Modric.
Van der Vaart. We had Modric. We had Ledley King.
These are
amazing players, you know, that were playing for Aaron Lennon. You know, and we didn't win anything, and then we changed that up. You know, we went again, and then we had the likes of Alderweireld, Vertonghen, Rose, Walker, Lloris, World Cup winner Lloris. You know, Kane, Dele Alli, like his prime, Christian Eriksen, and we still didn't win anything. So,
but you know what that just says to me? That just says how hard it is. That just says you can have some of the best players around, and you still don't do anything because you've got others who are equally as good.
I also think as well, to Lee's point there, and let you close, Paul, I think we're just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was going to say Macca on Ange. Be careful what you wish for. You've got this gig from July, so you're more than welcome to have this conversation when I'm going to be chasing 2 kids around in 45-degree heat. So Macca will have this from July for a little bit.
I'm in for it. I think just look, obviously I let Paul close, but I just think, look, everyone, I respect everybody's opinion. What I don't like it is when people get personal about stuff.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
No need to get personal.
The Ange and all that stuff. There's no reason for that. It's the same reason why I didn't want to start backing protests against Levy when they're saying bald this and names that. I mean, it's just no need for it. Like, grow up. You know, but have your opinion, fine, have your say, but you do it in a respectful way. Yeah. The statistics you read out earlier, it's very, very difficult to argue against them statistics. You know, who am I? But let's see how we go. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah. No, listen, I'll try and sum it up in one simple analogy.
Paul, you've got to take over the show if that's the case. Then you can sub this up in a couple of managers. You're
Paul's gonna
the
be
main.
back
I think Paul, you'll be back next week. That's perfect. I'll take the rest of the season off. Go for it, Paul.
After I psychologically assess you two as emotionally broken, I'm now going to sum it up in one quick story. So I have two brothers. They're both Liverpool fans. For 20 years, pretty much, they were in a state of depression every weekend when the Liverpool score came in because they basically were shit for 20 years, or however long it was when they weren't winning anything. And they lived their life based on Liverpool scores. As a player, it is so different because I came to Spurs as an 11-year-old kid. I told you the story about doing an advert with Gaza. Best thing ever. Absolutely loved it. Made my debut there. Scored a White Hart Lane. Just all your boyhood dreams coming true. I fucking love the club. And then they told me to piss off. Then I went to Norwich. And of course, I left Alan Sugar at Spurs, went up to Norwich, and you have this amazing woman called Delia Smith, who then brings you in and welcomes you into her family. Like, you love this place is brilliant. Let me have this time. I had 7 amazing years back in the Premier League, scoring against United at Old Trafford. Have the best things ever. Then they told me to piss off. And then you go through this career and you're like, as a player, it just is so different that because you need to protect yourself from an emotional point of view, that you have 20, 30, 40, 50, 75,000 fans at Old Trafford, all can be absolutely battering you. So you try and protect yourself with these defenses you put up. So your emotional attachment as a player has to be so different versus what I've seen you two guys get so emotional, so passionate, so enthusiastic, so much knowledge and information about your team is brilliant. But from a player, we just simply can't be that emotionally invested in the club because you would literally not survive a week in football.
It's fascinating.
Great
it's absolutely
point.
fascinating.
Fascinating.
Paul,
Yeah,
finally,
thank you so much,
amazing.
mate.
Paul, where can we find the work you do, what you're doing now? Where can we follow what you're doing on your journey? Where can they find you?
Yeah, obviously I've usually been putting out lots of tweets. See me on X or Twitter. It's just Paul McVeigh 77. See him on Instagram. But pretty much my biggest platform is LinkedIn, as obviously Lee talked about earlier. So all the work I do with the corporates, all the companies I speak for, the leadership development programs we deliver. And we've started a business recently called Football Business Speakers, where essentially we're bringing in the biggest names in professional football and world football into client events around the world. So yeah, get me on LinkedIn, better to connect there, follow me on there. And yes, please reach out if what we're talking about tonight is of interest in your job.
Paul, there's a lot of love, I've got to say, from those that are watching the show live right now. Many have enjoyed it. I think, again, it's great bringing somebody on that's been in that sphere, that has experienced a lot of what it is being a fan, being a player, and seeing that journey through to obviously having to work under football club. So we want to say a massive thank you to you. Lee, thank you ever so much, mate. We know you're back gallivanting around, so we really appreciate, mate, you finding the time for this one. We're going to, again, because I have to tell the listeners and viewers this. I know they're waiting to see you back every week, but Lee is off back gallivanting, so he'll be back with us very, very soon, probably around May time, where I'm going on my little mini break. Lee's going to take over for a little bit of a period. Lee, thank you, mate. I'm sure you want to express your love for the audience as well. I know you get a lot of messages asking where you are and where you've been. It's been a busy year for you, right? Busy year, business-wise, personal-wise.
It took the hairdresser that long to cut my big locks off, right? So I mean, that's why I've been away. That's why it's taken so long. Look, fantastic to have you on, Paul. Actually, absolutely brilliant. I agree with all the comments coming in. Superb. Definitely get you back on. I mean, I'm busy myself. I do a lot of LinkedIn business coaching, so I'd be interested to hook up with Paul. We've got a massive business event called Business Mania that is running for 4 days from November the 6th to the 10th. All will be revealed. Start following me. Start asking questions on my Instagram. I'm posting a lot of stuff out. This is in conjunction with Adam. We're doing a huge it's going to be about 650 people in the room. Lots of different businesses, all entrepreneurs, all business owners at different levels. We've got an unrivaled business coaching team, including myself, including Adam, including Damien Ross. It's going to be absolutely superb. There's about 12 of us that's going to be coaching across them 4 days. So if you want to get involved in my DMs. You know where to find me by now, Lee McQueen, or LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever it is, or on here when I'm taking up some of the reins when Rick's sunning himself with his family.
I'm not sure about sunning yourself with 2 kids under 5. I can't wait to get away and let Lee take the conversations over. I'm not sure it's more stressful, this or taking the kids away. We'll find out. I want to say a massive, massive thank you to the wonderful Lee McQueen and our brilliant special guest, Paul McVeigh. What a brilliant guest he's been. Real, true insight, knowledge that he didn't disappoint. We waited about 7-8 years to do this show. It's answered a lot of the things that we wanted. Paul, we can't thank you enough. Lee, we can't thank you enough as well. Guys, there you go. We've been the last word on Spurs. We're back with you very, very soon during this lovely stress-free period from Tottenham where we're smiling, we're happy, we're delighted, we're glowing. Thank you so much for your time from me, from Lee, from Paul. Thank you so much. And as always, come on, you Spurs.